Hi, my name is Mindaugas. I am CEO at Viva, and I'm just finished the conversation with an amazing psychologist who works in aviation with the aviation professionals. I truly believe that the topics that we touch today will be very important and opening for majority of you. So today about aviation from a very different angle with a psychologist, Krešimir from Croatia. So hi Krešimir.
Hi.
You didn't know that, but basically a couple of seconds ago I introduced to the viewers that today in this podcast that we are doing, we'll have a bit different form because you are now in Croatia and I'm in Dubai. We're doing that online, but I'm strongly believe that the topic that we will be touching today, or even the topics, will be engaging. And the next time we will meet in person, the question is where? Croatia, Dubai. It's okay. It's a 7 hours flight, I guess. So, but thank you so much to agreeing to come to our space, and thank you for having time to talk about aviation from other angle.
Thank you for having me. And I really think this kind of conversations are important to especially reduce stigma about mental health in aviation.
Before that, I just want to give a bit information about you. So tell us, you are a psychologist?
Yes, I'm actually an occupational psychologist and also an aviational psychologist. At first, I was working in occupational medicine. I still am in occupational medicine. And I wouldn't say I pursued aviation. It's more that aviation found me because at the time my company decided to expand. And we also became AMC. And that's where my story began. And I've been in aviation for about 5 years now. We've been doing different examinations and assessments. So, yeah, that's where it started 5 years ago. I also have to mention I have 2 colleagues, Dora and Diana. Without them, nothing would be possible. They're very talented, very great, and thanks to them, I'm in aviation too.
Tell me a bit about this part of, I don't know, can I call it checkups? It's not a checkup. It's something what you're doing basically to each pilot in general, based on the rules which comes from regulations.
Yes.
Just a bit to have a picture about that. And what kind of test it is.
Well, first, we do many different types of, let's say, assessments. It's one thing if the company is asking you to do a selection, like a selection process. Which of these future pilots or employees or cabin crew will be the best for them? Then you're doing a selection process. But then again, we are doing that mandatory assessment. It's called the CAT GAN 175B. So it's a mandatory examination that you have to do, a pilot has to do 24 months before start flying. And this is an EASA regulation. But this mandatory examination is something that we do, I would say, quite often. And I think it's a great thing because it also shows a change in the culture of aviation, because before that, sometimes you haven't even seen a psychologist as a pilot through all your career, maybe just the military pilots. And then aviation psychology was introduced in those initial examinations for the people that want to become pilots. And so it grew to what it is today.
You're working and doing that for 5 years.
Yeah, I would say about 5 years, more or less.
Did you? What is the impression about this segment of people? Are they, I don't know, different comparing to people who works in a bank, cafeterias?
Personality aspect. You're always looking for someone that with specific work values, people that are aware and people that can take responsibility, can act according to that, have good social skills, are, let's say, even open to experiences. So, of course, when we're doing this specific examination, you're also looking for the specific person. Will the person be the best for the specific company? So even though you may, let's say, fail this examination, it doesn't mean that you cannot be a pilot or that you cannot work in a different company. So, but yeah, they are, let's say, pre-selected, and the chances of you, let's say, finding a person whose profile is not the right for a pilot or is currently suffering from any kind of serious mental health issues is quite low.
Low. Okay.
Yes. The chances of that, but it happens.
Yeah. Are the people who are coming for those assessments, are they afraid that they will not pass it somehow?
Yes. Yes.
Really?
Yes, really, really. Some guys, what happens often, some guys are so they have such performance anxiety that they actually fail the tests. Then we do the retests. Yes, and then we do the retests because this is probably the first time they're doing a test like that, especially because I have people from all around, I would say, the globe. And if they're doing the test the first time, the anxiety level can be at that level that they don't know what to do, and they would even fail the test. But it doesn't really show their performance and who they really are. So you have to take this in considerations. Maybe someone would say, okay, but he's a pilot. How could a simple psychological test affect him that much? Pilots are just people. And flying and doing a psychological test is not the same.
What psychological challenges they commonly face?
Well, first I would say the problem is fatigue and everything that comes from fatigue, working long hours, irregular schedules, working nights, time zones, all of that, it really takes a toll on people. And I would also say the high level of responsibility, and you always have to be aware. The stress level, I would also say maybe that balance between work and life. I would also say that a lot of challenges they face are not that different from some other professions, but the magnitude there is different because they're working under much more stress and there's no room for error. And it's different in that way. Of course, there are some specific things that pilots face that maybe cabin crew faces less or more. Let's say, first thing that comes to mind for cabin crew would be that emotional labor. You're working with people. People can be difficult. Sometimes people fight. Maybe you're not in best terms with your colleagues. You have to smile all the time, and so on. For pilots, maybe that factor of isolation is a little bit harder. And I think it's very interesting that you mentioned the engineers and people, let's say, around the plane. Let's say like this. Imagine you're a pilot and it's, I don't know, 3 a.m. and it's snowing, it's raining, you have icing on the wings. You have to make, let's say, life decisions that can change someone's life, or life critical decisions. And it's very stressful. But that engineer outside is doing the same thing. He's also working nights in the rain, and he also has to make the same decision. And I would say the care or the focus of the mental health on the engineers is very low. I wouldn't say they're invisible. They go through that human factors training and so on, but it's mostly about communication and dealing with some problems. But they're not in the focus of mental health, which we can say, let's say it's a flaw. But I mean, how if we do a comparison, what was 10 years ago and now, it's much, much better.
I think that the fatigue in general is a source of a lot of problems in our life, and you don't need to be a pilot to have some issue if you are fatigued. This is why sometimes, there is this quote which says, if you have a bad day, just go to sleep. And maybe after the sleep, the day will be not so bad. But still, this is just the beginning of the fatigue. The professionals, the pilots or attendants who are coming to you, for example, what is their goal? Are they want to resolve some issues with the health? Are they just want to talk with you, or they just want to get some, I don't know, subscription for the pills? What is the reason?
Well, first I would ask you, why do you think they even ask for help? Because it's very, very rare. Something that we can say that you mentioned before, because of the stigma. So dealing with pilots is mostly when they have to, because when it's mandatory. The other thing is peer support programs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with how it works, the peer support program. But the thing is that you have peers, which are trained pilots. Most of the time, the trained pilots in the company that has its PSP, peer support program. And all the other crew members of pilots and cabin crew can call them at any time and talk about their issues, what they're dealing with. And the thing is, it's completely confidential. The management will never know what's it about. And if the peer, which is the pilot, can, let's say, not deal with that specific problem, then he refers that person to me as a mental health specialist. Then I work with that person. Let's say there's something that would be flight safety related, then it escalates. Then the procedure is much more complicated, but I think it's not, we won't go into that. But what the problems they mostly face are definitely fatigue, and I would say stress, burnout, everything that actually comes from aviation, the specific nature of the job and the companies, because it's different for some companies. Some companies have a good roster, maybe you have a bad roster, and it's different what you're gonna face. What else? I would also say anxiety. Anxiety is a big thing. Anxiety, depressive symptoms, and all the life challenges that are not different from other people's challenges, but as I mentioned before, are magnified here in aviation. And they mostly, it's dealing with relationship problems, family problems. You're away from home, you're gonna miss, I don't know, birthdays, special events. It all takes a toll on the people. And one thing that comes to mind, something that most people won't seek help for, unfortunately, is substance abuse, which is a thing in aviation and should be discussed about.
What kind of substance? Are we talking about drugs, alcohol?
Yes, we're talking about drugs, alcohol, and alcohol being number one.
But yeah, actually, I understand that from, you never know. What was first? Fatigue, alcohol, fatigue.
Absolutely. And speaking of alcohol, alcohol is one of the most effective drugs to deal with anxiety. it's one of the most effective anxiolytics, but in the same time, it's one of the worst anxiolytics, because every time you drink, you will need just that little bit more to feel less anxious. And in the same time, alcohol is a depressive, so you will deal with depressive symptoms. So it's a very bad, let's say, choice to deal with your problems.
You said about in the beginning about and we talked about this thinking that psychology is not so necessary, or let's say there is something which scares pilots, basically relative to their work and their careers. Is this changing somehow with the time? Because when we were talking about this conversation and possibility to have this podcast, I told you about the basketball teams back in Europe, that 20 years ago, psychologist was not existing as a specialist in a basketball team. Now it's totally okay. Everybody understands that you will perform better if you need to talk about it. It's the same like you are working on your body, going to the gym. The same you're doing with your mental health, going to
Absolutely.
Specialist. Is in aviation, it becomes more open and more, I don't know how to say, maybe liberal?
Yes, I would say so. I think that things are changing for the better. It still is, let's say, a stigma. The pilots are not that open to ask for help because they are afraid it will affect their license. They will be maybe seen as weak or something like that. That's why the peer support program is a great choice, because it never gets to the management. But yeah, as you mentioned, the basketball team, I mean, when psychologists first got into sports, there was also this, let's say, stigma. But today, everybody's using them, especially pro athletes. Same thing in aviation. I would say that things are changing. As I mentioned before, the culture is changing, and it's a good thing EASA made this mandatory examinations and a peer support program mandatory. They're mandatory for all the operators. They have to have it. I think one of the good things I would say, what would be beneficial, would promote peer support and mental health, seeking help for mental health and doing prevention in a way that maybe you have a person in your company that's, let's say, a highly visible person, someone that's, let's say, a sheep pilot or whatever, and let's say he uses peer support, or he goes to a therapist to work on something, let's say prevention, or he was dealing with any kind of issues, and he can openly say about things about that. And when everybody sees, okay, so he worked on his mental health, he told everybody that publicly, and it didn't affect his license. He's flying normally. I think this kind of situations would encourage people to seek help when they need it. And what I would like to mention, like you said, I mean, you work out, you eat good, you sleep, you do all those things. You don't do them just when you're feeling sick. You do them so if you become sick, you recover better, you lead a longer life, a healthier life. The same thing with mental health. We don't need to go and seek help only when we think we have a problem. I think it's good to work on prevention and to learn this, let's say, tips and tricks, how to deal with everyday problems for all of us, because we will get more resilient and deal with all the pressures and issues more effectively.
there is a difference between newcomers in aviation and those who are working longer?
Absolutely. I would say there's this generational factor. Younger pilots are more keen to ask for help or to go to a therapist and talk about it quite openly than older pilots. This definitely is a thing that, I mean, it's good. It shows what's going to happen in the future. Speaking of women, actually, there's not that a lot women pilots, more cabin crew, but I would say that mostly the challenges they deal with are quite similar. If they're different, it's something that it's personal life challenges that actually come from this kind of lifestyle. You know, one thing that happens often is relationship problems. You know, if we can make a comparison with the pilots and let's say seafarers or something like that, you often see problems in the marriage and so on. So everything that comes from that, first thing that comes to mind. But if you're asking me the generational thing, I would say from my experience, it's mostly the same. It would be anxiety, it would be dealing with life problems, stress, burnout. The older pilots sometimes tend to have, I would say, better coping skills. Now, the reason for that, it's hard to say, because in one regard, I would say the bar you need to reach to become a pilot today, it's different than it was 25, 30 years ago, you know? So those people, especially if you have people that have military backgrounds, you often see very good coping skills, and they know how to deal with all those, let's say, life issues. Well, the younger generation, I'm not sure what it is. Is it society changing, technology, everything? But their problems tend to be more different. And I would say anxiety, stress, burnout is number one.
Mm-hmm. Are you trying to tell me in between the lines that new generation is softer?
You said that, but yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's not just in aviation; it's everywhere.
Have you ever had a case that somebody has any kind of phobia, even the height? I don't know. Maybe that's possible.
I had a situation, but it was like a few years ago, where a pilot had a phobia of blood, and I think the captain had a nosebleed and he passed out. So that's, I would say, a big problem. I'm not sure how it ended, but yeah, something like that. And if I can get back to the last question, it says softer. Let's say we're joking a bit, but I think the newer generation are more prone to talk about the problems, while the older ones aren't. So even though you see, no, I'm fine, everything's fine, it's not fine, but they don't want to talk about it. The younger generation tends to talk about it more, and I actually see that as a positive thing. Some people will see this as softer, but I think it's better to discuss those things and to work on them, and generally to promote, let's say, psychoeducation for everybody. I think that for all the companies, a good idea would be to promote such trainings, maybe mindfulness trainings, things that people can learn and use in their everyday life, not just job.
As you said, the bar to become, for example, a pilot in nowadays is a bit different, comparing how it was 20, 30 years ago. Is the restrictions becomes lighter at the moment? Is it like more easier even to make all those tests that you guys are doing for the people? And my question has like a bit of continuity thinking about the future, because we know how aviation is expanding. We know what kind of after the COVID, especially all the planes growing, all the fleets are growing a lot, and there is a huge shortage of the pilots in the world, and it will be for the next 10 years. So everything that indicates about expansion, and of course you will need more people who can work in this industry. Is this bar will go lower just to basically get those people? I know that this is a philosophical, maybe a bit of question, but at the same time, maybe we can indicate something.
Well, I think it's a complicated question, and maybe a bit too complicated to answer in a simple way. So I'll try my best and say that I cannot say that the pressure from, let's say, flight schools, even maybe the CAAs, is in a way that they want to lower the bar because you're missing people. But in the other way, even that bar, let's say, is lower, it doesn't mean that it's not enough, because aviation is changing. Let's say you can have psychological health at any point. We know much more about the body and the human mind. We know how to deal with making a better work schedule. Technology is changing. It's not the same as flying a plane 50 years ago and today. I mean, who knows, in the future, I know that Boeing and some other companies are doing research on SPO, single pilot operations. So who knows, maybe in the future, you'll have only one pilot in the cockpit. Most of the pilots don't even want to hear about it. And I think the passengers wouldn't want to hear about it because it sounds like a scary step. But who knows?
If you're still imagining that the guy who's sitting in the cockpit, basically holding the wheel and everything. But, you know, as you say, technology is changing. Basically, now the pilot is just coming, sitting in a cockpit and looks after all the devices, mainly, more or less, you know. So I'm not surprised, of course, with the AI coming to the aviation so fastly, that in the future we might have only one pilot in a cockpit.
Who knows? Maybe 20, maybe 25 years. I'm not sure, but yeah, the technology is changing.
So you're saying that maybe this bar is not like going lower, it's just changing in general.
Yes.
What kind of people we're looking?
Of course, I wouldn't say it's appropriate. It's not appropriate, but it's different. But of course, things change. I mean, look at cars. If you're driving a car that's like made 60, 70 years ago, and if you're driving a new Tesla, you don't need to know how to drive that well anymore. But it doesn't mean that you can drive or that you're less safe in traffic. Actually, you're more safe. So
from those tests, let's say, that the pilot needs to do when he's already working, what each of the pilot needs to remember and not to forget? Very technical question, but basically, if I'm a pilot, once per year I need to renew something, or like each 2 years I need to do something?
Actually, this mandatory examination is something that you need to do when you're entering a company, when you 24 months before you start flying. So even though if you're in a company and let's say 2-3 years, you decide to go in a different company, you have to do that assessment once again.
Okay, but during that period when I'm in one airline, nobody is asking me to do any kind of test, maybe my mental health change in a year?
No, actually, no. But it's still better than it was before, because sometimes you became a pilot and up till 65 years, nobody asked you about that. So no, in that period, you don't have, let's say, mandatory assessments, but you have to make your medical at the AME, at your aeromedical examiner, and they also have a questionnaire where they're asked if there's any kind of mental changes and so on. So if you're honest,
I think I'm smiling because we both understand that I filled this kind of form, not even being a pilot, and of course that 99% I said no, 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 no. But at the sum of the questions, if they would really want to know a bit deeper about me, I could open up and talk a bit like, hey guys, I had just a divorce with my wife and I'm really struggling in the last 8 months. But I know that if I will mark the answer, yes, do you have any kind of anxiety in your life? Mm-hmm. That will have effect to my job. This is why I'm saying that if that would become like a rule, for example, that each half a year, you need to go to do a specific test that airline would know that everything is good with your mental health. And if something is wrong, you have a help. You have something which you're not fired. Mm-hmm. You basically, the company is secured, that the healthy and people who taking care of, 150 souls on the board, they are stable in that moment. They are not too tired and they are ready to do their job. And at the same time, pilot not hiding anymore. He can speak about more loudly if that becomes a rule. Because if we are hoping that the pilot will cross your doors, for example, on his own decision, it might be hard for him.
I understand what you're saying, but I have to say, if you're dealing with, let's say, a mental health issue, let's say you're anxious or whatever, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It's a signal. So let's say if you have a pain in your leg, maybe you just need a little bit of rest. Maybe you need some cream or some medication. If it hurts a lot, maybe you'll go to see a doctor. Maybe you'll need an operation, but you're going to fix that. The same thing is with dealing with mental health. There is help. And putting it, sweeping it under the rug is not a good idea. So what I would say, when you're at your AME and you are struggling with this kind of issues, don't be afraid to tick yes, because it doesn't mean that you're going to lose your job. It won't affect your license, because being anxious, I don't see if you're anxious because you're, let's say, getting a divorce. I don't see this as a flight safety related matter. It doesn't mean that you're not able to fly. It just means that you're currently dealing with some issues that there's help for. And you can tell that to your enemy, and your enemy can say, okay, you can visit a psychologist. You can maybe go to an aviation psychologist. Maybe you will go to your therapist or wherever. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say, it's not a taboo. It's not a problem if you have a problem, and if the problem is, let's say, at that level that it's flight safety related, then it should be discussed then truly. And I hope that every AME can detect that. But I think that reducing this stigma and talking about that we have issues, even to your AME or whoever, to your peer support, is a good thing. I can maybe add, talking with some people, pilots privately, I know that some of them do these things that way. They check, I don't have a problem, but privately they went to a therapist. So it wasn't something flight safety related, but they were scared. They didn't want to mix oranges and apples.
Yeah.
I don't want to mix this with my job. They're still afraid to say, I'm dealing with some issues. But I mean, it's better to go and see a psychologist like that in your own way and deal with these issues. But what I'm trying to say, don't be afraid to tell that to the professionals, because let's say in my job, I'm not, my goal isn't to find out who's dealing with mental health issues and ground that person. No, my goal is to help those people and to give them the best advice I can. And even in peer support, you have this, you're helping the person out, you're telling them where to go and everything. Even if, let's say, they shouldn't fly at that moment, you deal that with safety. You say, this person will be taken off the roster for the next 2-3 weeks. They don't ask why. They can't ask why. He goes, he deals with the problems. He goes back to flying through this procedure. It's called the return to fly. You call them a few times, you see how they're dealing, and they continue on flying. So this is the big matter. So it's much better to discuss and to be open about it, because management won't know. We will try to do everything in our power to help you out than to hide those problems, because, when you sweep things under the rug, they tend to come back and to be even worse.
I thought that sometimes problems is not the problems. We just very fast deciding about ourselves that I already have a problem. But what we ignoring, as you said, we ignoring those small signs which are coming. Like, for example, some of the changes might be very simple and easy, and you need a professional who can basically advise you, and just like listening to you and say, come on, cut off all the sugar, because you're drinking all those soft drinks, you have more sugar in your blood and you feel this anxiety all the time. And this is sharing something what I did actually, or I'm doing time to time in my life. When I'm cutting the sugar, at least 1 week or 2, I'm sleeping better. And this is a small thing, but I needed a person in my life who came and said like, hey, maybe you should say no to the soft drinks for a while, and that will help you a lot. Can we basically, on our side, can do something more to encourage professionals while working in this industry?
As I mentioned before, I had this idea like you can have a person in your company, let's say a highly visible person that would be like a role model to promote mental health well-being. I think it would be great for the companies to do this kind of training. Why not do a mindfulness training for all your employees? Work on, let's say, training of awareness. Like you discussed before, you said you needed someone to tell you that you should cut back on sugar. So awareness is very important. It's the first step, to be aware that you have a problem. Not being ready to talk about the problem is one thing, but not being aware of the problem is different. And I think this kind of training, this kind of, let's say, psychoeducation can help us with that. It's sometimes it's too simple even for people to think that that's all. Sometimes you just need to talk to someone. Sometimes you just have to verbalize your problem, say it out loud, write it down. It's different. It's different. Just try it out. Let's say you're talking to a friend and your friend is saying, oh, I have a problem, and the problem is the same problem you're having. What would you do? First thing, you would try to give him a better advice, maybe try to comfort him. You would try to find the solutions. But when we're dealing with the same problems, oh, it's not the same. Oh, I can't deal with that. I'd rather not talk about it. It's different. Once you write it down, once you verbalize it, you're going to start trying to make it better, maybe ask for solutions, search solutions. So I think that's a a good trick to do. And what I would say, let's say to the companies, mental health issues, mental health is a safety thing. It's a safety thing. I see companies spending a lot of money in preventing maintenance of their planes, which is a great thing. Why not spend some of that money in mental health? You know, because in the end of the day, if you're doing this kind of training, if you're trying to promote mental health, if you're doing this, promoting a peer support program, it will result in people being happier. It will result in people going less on sick leave, writing less fatigue reports. It will result in, if the companies want to hear that, you will have more money. So it will be better for you. So it's a safety issue, and I think it's good to work on that.
What would be your advice? What I can do on the daily basis besides my, I don't know, good eating, good night's sleep, workouts, etc. What could I add to keep my emotional balance as much as possible balanced?
Well, as you said, the first thing, I wouldn't say just beside that, because these are very important factors. Take care of your body, because, you know, just working out will raise your serotonin and dopamine levels, and you will feel better. What I would say is talk to people, discuss your problems, acknowledge them. And what I would say, try to make, let's say this, how I would call them, powerful habits, something that you like, something that you do every day. It can be really from going to the gym to talking to someone close to you, to, let's say, watching an episode of a movie or something, a movie that you like, whatever. But it's good to have this, I would say, predictable things that will ground you on the end of the day. Because when you're dealing with, you know, this irregular schedule, with all these things that happen in aviation that are unpredictable, things like that will keep you, let's say, a counterpart from that would be, this will give you a sense of control, something that you do, something, your habits. Also, I would say, sounds a bit simple, but breathing techniques and grounding yourself, like mindfulness. Mindfulness is really a great idea to do, because you can do it anywhere. You can do it in the cockpit. You can do it wherever you like. You don't need 10, 15 minutes. You can have like 30 seconds, maybe, if you learn these techniques. You just focus on your body, focus on breathing, focus on a part of your body. You just get yourself out of that situation. You just get yourself out of the situation, because when you're anxious, you're actually living in the future. You're living in the scenarios that are about to happen or probably won't happen.
90% never happen.
Yeah. You know, when you were anxious about something, how many times did the scenario play out just the way you were anxious about? Almost never. Same thing with depression. If you're depressed, you're living in the past. You're dealing with the things that are past. Oh, I should have this. Oh, how could I, you know? So this kind of techniques will help you get back into the present, into the moment. Okay, I'm dealing with anxiety. I'm dealing with what's about to happen. I'm going to breathe deeply. I'm going to focus on, let's say, a part of my body just to keep myself grounded. Okay, and we can go, we can move on. This, let's say, automatic thoughts will keep coming. But each time you do this technique, it will be much easier for you to bring yourself into the moment, into the present, and to, let's say, not ignore, but let's say accept that this kind of thoughts, this kind of automatic thoughts are coming, and I'm not going to deal with them. They're like clouds. They are coming and they will pass. So this is a technique that I would definitely recommend to people. What else? Stay socialized, stay connected, and know that dealing with issues and seeking help from a professional isn't a big deal. And that's some of the things I would say to that person.
I'm saying thank you for this episode that you participated today, but I'm 99% sure that we will meet again. And the next time, maybe I'll encourage even those who are watching this podcast to ask some questions, and we can be maybe even more specific the next time.
Sure, why not?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope at least one person, if he'll listen to this podcast, decides to open up and seek help if he needs, or at least talk to someone, or maybe use one of those tricks we talked about.
Hvala lijepa. If it sounds correctly. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, and see you next time.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye.